let us start. So as I said, we will start with .NET 5. Please ask the questions in the chat. So we will have Q&A session at the end. So we will present the things and then have a Q&A session at the end. Okay, so .NET 5, what is it about? This is a nice picture I took from Okta blog, saying, you know, like this famous phrase from the Lord of the Rings, "One to rule them all," because that's how .NET 5 was branded. Okay, we had like many .NETs, and now we want to continue in the future with having this a single .NET framework, which is going to be developed. What does it mean for us? It really depends. Like if you were mostly, like some years ago, if you were mostly in the desktop .NET world, you never thought that there are so many .NET frameworks. But the matter of fact is they are. What I wanted to show you, but I will not search for it again, was one class from the packet, which is the alternative to NuGet. It's a packaging manager for .NET. It's a single F# class listing all the .NET frameworks and their versions, and it's an endless list. If you ever try to develop something which was portable for different .NET targets and so on, you know what kind of a mess and difficulty it was. So at least with .NET 5, the promise is that from now on we are starting with a single .NET framework on one side, and the other side a single runtime as well. I have to say, when I saw it for the first time, it reminded me on this legendary joke from XKCD, saying, you know, like we have already so many .NETs, and now we are adding one on top of them, and then we have all of them and this new one. It applies to an extent because for years to come, we will have to live with .NET 5, the new one, and also with the .NET versions we are already aware of. So let us see a bit, what is it? .NET 5, what does it mean for us in practice? So is it something we should immediately jump on, or is it something we can safely ignore at the time? Is it a hype or what? I like this this presentation, which coming from Inedo, which actually for me explains well what is actually going on and how things are going to progress. So what's important at the moment? We have .NET Core, we have .NET Framework, and all different flavors of it. And what it's important now with .NET 5 for us developers is the following. First of all, .NET Core will not be actively developed anymore. Actually, .NET 5 can be seen as the continuation of .NET Core development. It's built on top of .NET Core. And also the .NET Framework, the classic one, will not be developed anymore. So .NET Framework 4.8 will remain the last version of .NET Framework. So what does it mean? All the new framework features, that's the first consequence, all the new framework features will be coming only in this bar below. So that means in .NET 5 plus. And not only new framework features, also new language features. So what we are showing today for C#9 officially works only on .NET 5. You can use some of the features in previous versions of .NET, but officially only .NET 5 is supported. And that's the matter tag. So that's one thing, the future, the new things which are coming to the framework. And the second thing is the long-term support. So for how long we're going to get security patches or whatever. And here you can see that for .NET Core 3.1, the long-term support is roughly 3 years from now. For the old .NET Framework, for 3.5 is 10 years more roughly. And for .NET Framework 4.8, this is a very important part. It's going to be extended as long as Windows are there. So we expected that it will be there. Why is this important? So long-term support and also the new features. And how we should approach it in a decision of switching to .NET 5, yes or no. In general, when it comes to modernizations of this kind, it's a difficult question. It depends largely on what kind of software you have and what kind of software you develop. So first of all, we have to understand what is it here inside in .NET 5. If you are already on .NET Core, everything what you have on .NET Core is already in. Roughly, that means base class library means .NET Standard 2.1. And also we have WinForms for Windows development, and we have WPF. But there are plenty of things which are not there, which are in .NET Framework 4.8, especially when it comes to Windows-specific development. For example, Windows Communication Foundation, WCF, is not in, and we are talking about real legacy web forms are not in. So the question of adopting .NET 5 or moving to .NET 5 largely depends on what are your plans and what you have. And I can give you a few examples of them out of my experience and customers. But let's discuss this with straightforward. So if you are on anything below .NET 4.8, just move to .NET 4.8. You're on a safe path. You will have security patches and everything means updates, and you're on a long-term support, lifelong-term support. Yeah. If you are on .NET Core 3.1, I would say switch to .NET 5 will be very easy. So there are not much difficulties in this transition, and this is something I advise. Last week we had a meeting at the company TVL where I work as an architect, and there was a decision made. So the new projects will be done on .NET 5, and also the existing one, which are .NET Core 3.1, we will shift them to .NET 5. The more difficult question is if you're on .NET Core 2.1 already. Then the switch will not be that easy. You will have to do it sooner or later if you see there is no support for .NET Core 2.1 less than a year from now. So the breaking changes are equivalent to those if you want to switch from .NET Core 2.1 to .NET Core 3.1. Difficult thing is this: if you are on .NET Framework 4.8 and you're considering switching to .NET 5, that is very likely that it is going to be very tricky. Out of the examples I've seen in practice, it's a thing completely comparable to switching from .NET Framework to .NET Core. Depends a lot about what you have. But what I can say for sure is this part. Now, what's also changing, and what's important to understand, is that the term long-term support, these versions which are even versions like 6 and 8, they're going to be long-term support versions. But long-term support is not what we were used to, like decades. This is now 3 years. The consequence of that is that anyhow, changing the framework regularly is going to be the practice. So what I hope is that something like that for new projects will definitely become a practice, means at least once per year changing to a major version of the .NET framework. We don't know how many changes are going to be and so on. We don't expect that many, so we can assume that this is most likely going to be a safe switch. What I like about it, Microsoft is kind of pressing us implicitly to write better software. Because if you want to, for example, if any one of you did a switch from .NET Core 2.1 to .NET Core 3.1 and used, for example, Entity Framework Core, there were a couple of breaking changes which were hard to detect if you didn't have like good test coverage and so on. So this is roughly, I would say, the state of the .NET world as it is now. My general advice is, as I said, consider switching to .NET 5, but you don't have to. That's the major point. It definitely depends on your actual situation. Here, I'm curious. Also, I've said a bit about my experiences. I'm curious also, Marko, for you. You're also in the company where you run different projects from different customers. Do you already have some strategy? What is your approach to this?
Well, we are not moving yet to .NET 5. It largely depends on a project. For example, financial projects, they're not so keen on moving to .NET 5 before they are secure that it will work. Black Friday was not long time ago, and we had a freeze. So in this project on Black Friday, we had freeze and nothing could be changed. So it will take some time.
Conservative.
Yeah.
Good.
I believe that in some other projects, it could be done faster.
So it's in general a question of modernization. I would stop here at the round table 2 weeks ago. We discussed a bit more about the different scenarios and so on. But here I would say, if you have a concrete need and concrete projects, please feel free to contact us. When it comes to modernization at GUID, a lot of consultancy we are doing is definitely software modernization, not only switching the frameworks, but in general. Good. Marko, I would say now this was a short introduction to .NET and how to approach it. I would now say let's switch to demo and start showing what's new in C#.
Yeah.
If you're ready.
Yeah, I'm ready.
Perfect. Then let me
share my screen. Okay.
share your screen.
So I will start with the demo. Okay, we need to show C# 9. I believe that one of the best ways to show C# 9 is to actually take an older application, C# 8, and upgrade it to C# 9. We will see features of C# 9 when we upgrade this app into newer version. Actually, what it does. It's a People Sharp app. This demo app is something that could be used by human resources department or someone like that. It has a list of employees. You can recalculate vacation days, show you departments in the company, and calculate some statistics. That's not much, but it's enough for us to see features of C# 9 in this example. This is Blazor app, Blazor web application app. So client is running in a browser, we have server, and also we have shared project, shared between client and server. And here I have a few DTO classes, data transfer classes. Idea is, in data layer, we will fill these classes with data from database and send it up to presentation layer. Okay, so this is something that we have wrote many times before. Class with a number of properties. Data transfer objects are something that's not often changed. We load the data in and send it around. So this is something that could be immutable. But we have these setters that allows us to change department names, subdepartments, and everything in any point of the code. But starting with C# 9, we have one new feature. One of the new features. We can change property from setters to init-only property. So if I change all the sets into init, I'm getting a new possibility. A possibility that this department is immutable, but it can only be set when it's created. So if I look at place in code, where I'm building this department, we can see it's initialized when the new department is created. This is okay, this is what I want. I want to create it here. I cannot modify department later. Let's take another example, employee. We can do the same thing. This is also data transfer object. We can replace all the sets with init. This means we cannot change any of these properties once the object is created. So if I build this, I will get an error because at one point in code, I'm changing vacation days. So init only works. It will not allow me to change vacation days because now it is init only property. This is a first step into immutability. Immutability is something not so familiar to C#. It's more used in languages like F#, but it's something that is coming to C#. Init only is the first thing. The second thing is a record. We can change a class into a record. Now things start to look different. Record is a reference type, but it's immutable by default. It's a reference type like a class, but it cannot be changed once it's created by default. It's the idea. There is also a thing with equality, and we will play with it soon. But first of all, let's say that a record as a class can also be inherited. So manager can inherit from employee. But please note that employee is a record. So manager also has to be a record. Class cannot inherit from a record. Okay, now I have created a record manager, I have a record employee, and I can now fix this bug. I have a bug and I can fix it. So I have selected employee. This is a record and I want to change its property. By default, that's something that I cannot do, but I have to do it. So what can I do? What can I do to avoid this error? I can create a new employee based on a selected employee, my original employee, with something different. When this property vacation days set to a new value, new vacation days. This syntax actually creates a new record, a new object in memory that is different from the original object in this vacation days property being set to a different value. So this is the way to change an object. It's declared as a record. Now use new employee in the rest of my code. Okay, this does fix this problem, but I would like to investigate something here. What does it mean for a record to be equal to another record? We know what does it mean for a class to be equal to another record, or for a struct to be equal to another record. But for the employee as a record, what does it mean to be equal? Well, we definitely know that new employee and selected employees are not equal. So this should okay, this was easy. Because selected employee and new employee are different in the number of vacation days. But what would happen if I would to create a third employee, yet another employee? I will take a new employee and set back vacation days. I will let vacation days be equal to the original value selected employee. I want to set vacation days back in. So actually all the properties in the third employee and in the original selected employees will be the same. Does it mean that those are the same objects? Well, equal will tell us that yes, they are the same. And we'll run this in a second and we will see that actually this will be true because in case of the records, if two records have the same properties, all the properties have the same value, then the equals will return true. Of course, there is another thing, and that's the reference equal. Take selected employee and the third employee. Memory, this is not the same thing. these are two different objects, but because they have all the properties the same, they will be considered equal. We can just quickly run this to make sure. Okay, public record. I've missed one little thing, and that's the letter I. Okay, we are starting again the application. We're gonna run that code again and check what happens to equal operator. Okay. Let's go step by step. So as expected, this must be false. But the third and the first employee are equal because all the properties in those two records are equal now. And still the reference equal is false because those are the different objects in memory. Okay. What else can we do with records? We have saw the department. We can create a record for department. Compile it to make sure this works at this point. Now, I would first like to show you this part again. This is the part where we are creating the new department. Now it's the record. And there is something with a record that I personally find quite interesting, and that is this ability to declare the record in one single line. So if you look at this code, I have the public repeated 4 times. Get init repeated 4 times. But actually what I want to say is this record has property called department name. It also has these 3 properties. And this is the way to write all this in much shorter form. Actually, to write it down in a single line. Semicolon at the end, and I can comment out this is a positional record, and it is written in a single line of code, the complete record. Before we move on, what do you think will happen with this part when we compile? It already is saying that something is wrong. We have the red line here. You see, before we have moved all the properties in a single line, it compiled, but now it doesn't because it expects us to use the department in this manner with everything in a single line. Luckily for me, I don't have to type many things because here I have a tuple with all these elements. Method parse is returning this tuple. So let me put it here, semicolon, and this is it. Now it will compile. Actually, what I like here is that I have removed so many lines and replaced them with only one. I can do even one better and take another class employee. Let's call this a record and do the same thing. You see, records actually do bring some code with them. When we write a record, we get automatically these elements, like the constructor equals get hash code, and the rest of this 5 lines, around 50 lines. We can get it all just single line where we will write all the properties one to another. Okay. Now take a bunch of code and remove it. From 50 plus lines of code to a single line of code. Is that a record? One other thing, this record is used here as a base class, base record. Now, we have already said that records can only inherit from another record, so this class must be a record. Now, we're getting into an area of very long lines. This is derived class, so it has to have those properties of derived class and everything from the base class. Playing with records, I have noticed that in this case, when I have positional records with all properties in a single line, I also have to, behind the base class, put all the elements to initialize the base class. Of course, those are the elements of the base class. This is getting a little bit long, but it is still a single line of code. To check, does it compile still? It should. It does. Now, the interesting question here.
If I can jump in here, like this single line of code, I've seen such an examples. For me, it reduces actually the readability. So I really have to read a single line of code from left to right. Are there already some best practices into that direction? And it's a single line of code in a one file. Are there already some best practices? Like, do we treat this as a class, every record in its own file? Are we going to structure this single line differently, like in a column, which is my preferable way?
Well, people are talking about the idea, the question, should we keep the one record per file? We had the idea to keep one class per file. So in case of department, we have one line. This is actually commented out. So we have one line. Some people are asking the question, should we put multiple records in a single file? We have this file with one line, we could put it together with those two single line files. Now, in my opinion, well, I would say that people are still didn't get it, the final verdict. You have different opinions. Some people are telling that it's time to stop putting a single class, single record in a single file. Some people would like to see multiple records in one file. But for example, first thing that I would change here is file name. I have a stats company that is the same as the name of the record. So perhaps we should start with changing the file name.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm.
but also this is quite. This is actually a small example. This is a demo app just for the meetup. But if you would take a real big app, you would in big application have more than 5 records. So does it make sense to put 100 records in a single file?
Just because they're single liners, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Personally, I like the even a line per file. We had these situations also before, like when you have maybe like a class definition with just a single line deriving from some other class or marker interfaces and so on. I don't see anything against that, but I'm for the vertical listing of the properties. That's the because I have hard time reading them in a line, definitely, and there's so many of them.
Yeah. This
Yes,
example
sorry,
here.
I was just curious.
Yeah. This is
What do you
quite a
think?
long line. We have department that's not so long, but still
please
there's a
continue with
lot
the
of
feature.
things.
This is definitely something. I'm also curious what kind of proposals will come with the tooling and so on.
Yeah. I think that in the next years we will see people perhaps coming to some kind of an agreement, and it's a good idea to have a tool that would suggest to us, should we write it in this way? Should we put every record in its own file, or should we group them? But if we put one record in one file, we can still create a folder like this, statistics, and have all the records regarding statistics in a single folder. So it doesn't take too much screen real estate when you look at it like this. Okay. Okay, we can have a further discussion at the end during the QA and see how many people in the audience would prefer to put it single record in a single file or to group multiple records in one file. Well, now there are some things that haven't changed for a quite long time in C#. One of those things is a new operator. So Igor, did you hear what happened to a new operator in C#9?
Sorry, I'm muted. Let me show you a
Yeah.
couple of examples. There are a couple of things which were not changed, like definitely since the beginning of C#, and now they're getting some new dimensions, and one of them are so-called target typed new expressions. So I'm gonna show it. Mark already showed us like heavy deletions of code. I'm saying like it's always good to delete code. I'm a huge fan of it. But what I'm going to show you now is really about the code deletion, and again, coming to more readable, definitely code. But in general, the deleting code is a good thing. So let me share my screen and show you a couple of things. So what are the target type new expressions? You are all aware of these things, and you know, for example, that since the C# 3.0, we can have a var here. That's a known feature. And starting with C# 9, there is another one thing which we can do, which is possible. So I can remove this, and the code will still compile. So what I'm doing now, I'm simply saying like new, and the compiler is there to figure out that it's definitely have to be DAO departments. What is it about? Target type new means if the compiler can understand the target type, you don't have to you don't have to type the type. Nice. In this particular feature, in this particular line, the feature is confusing actually. So for me, it's like, should I pick up var, or should I pick up var, or should I remove DAO departments? Honestly, coming up for meaningful rules for var was not that easy, and now with this it's even more confusing. But the point of the feature is not this one line. There are places where it's really, really useful, and I'm gonna show you some examples what's also possible and where it's useful. For example, let's take a look at this one. So I have a date of deployment. We are creating here some seed objects. We have a date of employment, date, time, and now I can do the same thing, and it's gonna work. So if you think of it now, you're actually getting like much less clutter in the code. There are plenty of other places where you cannot use var to shorten like the long declarations and so on. Let me show you some, since we don't have them in this example that many, but you will recognize them. You will recognize them easily. So let's take a look at this one. This is my favorite example, something you can see in the code often. So we create, for example, a collection of a certain type of new objects, and then we are always actually declaring the type. So new date time, although it's obvious that it's daytime. So this is definitely done a nice reduction of clutter, especially if you have like really objects like this, like a point or something. I've been while I was writing, come later to that, the tool for some static code analysis, going through the code, seeing examples. These places like this are very often in real life code. Then another one example is this, for example, if you have private fields or if you have properties, you cannot use var here. So I cannot say this is a var because I have the expression on the other side. But now what you can do is you can definitely do this. So these are the places where you can neatly remove unnecessary types. Combining these things together, again, I'm a huge fan of deleting code. I can say here, so what I have here is I have a private field within my class, but I can definitely remove, so I need a constructor call here, but I can still remove plenty of things. This is, I would say, the essence of the feature. Not much more to say. Whenever you have a place where you have a constructor call with new, and the type can be figured out by the compiler, you can simply remove the type. Personally, I like it because it's definitely removes the clutter. What I find problematic, to come back to this example, is that for me the feature is a bit conflicting with the var feature. So for example, I'm using this tool Sharpen, which gives me solution for modernization of C# code. And if I take a look, for example, now, it will provide me to use var keyboard. For example, the example which I was on, so Sharpen actually tells me do this. But this suggestion was made before target type new expressions were there in the language. And now coming with a good set of rules, where to use var and where to use target type new expressions in this overlapping scenarios is going to be interesting. Okay, so this is one simple feature which allows us to remove some clutter from code. And the next one I want to show, which I personally also love, is called top-level statements. So what is it about and why I like it so much? Let me go here. As usual in programming, like we always have to write some like small scripts or pieces of code for our people sharp, yeah. We have some small tool which report vacation days and so on. So it's a simple console app which has only a program CS, and this is the code which is in it. I have some code inside to get the data, and that's it. And a lot of clutter around just to explain the compiler what's the entry point to the application, namely the main function. So if you think of it, my code, this is what is really my logic, is actually this code here. And I have to write the things around just to satisfy the entry point for the compiler. Top-level statements is a new C#9 feature which allows us to remove all this clutter around. So what I'm going to do, I can simply say all these things around are actually cluttered. They were there just to explain to the compiler what is the entry point, and now I can simply do it like this. This is a perfectly valid C# program. It looks maybe a bit strange at first, but if you think of it, that's it. It's called top-level statements. So compiler will, in the background, automatically create the main method and so on. So maybe just few ideas that you understand what you have inside. Let me do this. Having hard-coded names, it's not the best programming practice. So I will just go here to this report file name, and I'm going to say I'm actually using command line arguments here. Let's say the name is in the command line argument. As you can see, the command line arguments are there. So this all behaves like being actually in the main method. I'm going to show you what the compiler generates in the background. But why I like this feature so much? First of all, learning purposes. I will just give an example here, like simple Hello World app in C#9 can actually look like this. I will just put here hello, and that's it. Compared to the traditional Hello World, like this is a much lower barrier to literally entry the C# basic C# programming. But for me, there is another one thing which is more philosophical, and I think it's important. Entry point to an application has to be small. If you think about the entry point, for example, to ASP.NET Core applications, there are just a couple of lines of code saying start something. Same thing is with Windows desktop applications. You have this main method simply saying, run application, and that's how things should be developed. I've seen in the practice, like program CS is the largest one I've seen was roughly 30,000 lines of code, literally in one program CS file. This should never happen. So program CS should definitely be a simple entry point. And what I'm looking forward and hoping that it's going to happen is this one, that this is going to be the standard template for new console applications. When you do a new console application, that you just get these two things inside means I can now do my Hello World immediately like this. Good. For your info, here you can see what the compiler is generating in the background. Actually, all that clutter having the main method and so on is generated in the background, and you can simply put your code in the script which you want. It's a tiny feature, top-level statements, but I definitely like it, and I hope it's going to become a standard practice that we keep our entry points, tiny, and then also that the templates will change. That's it for these two simple things. We can move on.
Okay.
Marko, I guess.
Yeah. Just to quickly mention, we will not show this in code, but there is one other thing that new in the C#9 that hasn't changed in like 20 years. It's int. Platform-specific ints will not.
You mean the keyword, the platform-specific integers?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
The idea is just to quickly put an int, and this should work. It's platform-specific. In my opinion, I don't think that we will use it so much. We will probably stick with writing int. What do you think?
No, we will definitely stick to writing int. It's actually this new feature, we have to be careful. It's really for platform dependent development, like if you use invoke or something. So I would say so long as you're in a managed world, there is no need for this. Interestingly, like in August, I had an opportunity to work on one third-party library, which was working fine in 32-bit, but wasn't in 64-bit. And these are the kind of scenarios where using an int is where using an int makes sense, definitely. But in a regular programming, it's let's say managed programming, it's not something we will see that much. But the interesting thing is, yes, we got a new keyword, like new type keyword, like it was for the past 20 years. It wasn't changed, and now suddenly next to int we got an int as well. Yeah, good. Time is passing, so we can move again to, these were some simpler features. We can move again to some mightier features. Like
mighty features. Well, what do you say about patterns? Let's talk a little bit about patterns. Patterns are something that came around to C# in C# 7. It was improved in C# 8, and again it is a little bit improved. So let's look at this quite simple piece of code. But again, we are repeating itself. Vacation days, 4 times we have to wrote vacation days. Year without company, again and again repeated. Could it be more simpler? Could it be more clear? The basic idea behind these lines of code is take number of vacation days, 20 as a default, and increase it depending on how long an employee was in the company. So let's just say vacation days, and let's say just once. It's enough. We will increase it depending on years in the company. I will use switch expression, something from C# 8, but now I will use pattern that was not there in previous version of C#. I want to say that increase number of vacation days by 1 if years with companies greater than 1 or and smaller or equal to 4. Simply, if year with company is between 1 and 4, take 1 and increase vacation days by 1. And now I will just keep writing these quite simple terms. This is the same thing, actually the same thing, but here we have a much simpler and clear version of the code. Remove this part of code and just leave it so we can visually compare it. This will compile, but compiler has something to say. Compiler has noticed that we have not covered the case of pattern 0. So the compiler is doing its thing and checking the code, and has noticed that we are missing this line. Oh, something more. Pattern 10 is not covered. Okay, I have 10 here, but good thing that compiler has checked this, because at this line I'm checking is it less than 10, in this line is it greater than 10, but I have to have this less or equal. Okay, the good thing about these patterns here is that compiler has done the hard work of checking all those edge cases. Perhaps I would notice this, or perhaps I wouldn't, but compiler has warned me. Okay, I have pattern and to bind together these two expressions. As you may guess, I also can use OR. It doesn't make much sense here, and it will actually create error because these lines here cannot be matched anymore. They are all matched with this one line. And OR, and there is of course not. I will use not in one place. How many times we wrote this? Something different than null. Something is not null. We have a number of lines, and now we can use a pattern to actually say, instead of this is not. This is perhaps more cute, more readable. Personally, it reminds me of SQL. This is not null syntax. Well, let's return back to vacation days. We have seen this pattern, and
Marko,
now
if I can jump in here. So if I see that line, something is not null, it's definitely like a human language. It's readable, it's obvious, and so on. But if I see the calculation example, if you come back to the calculation example, you said it's simple and more readable and so on. I remember when I've seen it for the first time. In general, these kind of expressions, they cause quite some headaches on my side, because it takes some time before you really like adjust and are able to translate them properly. Like if you see the second line, like and like I have 4 1 like going on the left, going on the right, so this looks like it's less than or equal than 4 or greater than or equal than 1. What is that? Oh no, it's actually produces 1. So it takes some time to really get accustomed to them. And also we have to be a bit careful. If I may give you examples, just that everybody gets an idea. It's a beautiful feature. If you use it right, you can come to really nice expressions which are human readable, but you can also cause some issues. So let me show you a few examples what I mean. So I have some empty string there, and I have some number. See that they are objects actually. So I'm getting them as objects. I'm not sure that they are strings. So I can now say something like that. Empty text is null or empty. I can literally write this and say, wow, empty text is null or empty, and it is empty. So I guess that this is true. Keep in mind that this you can use anywhere where you have a Boolean expression, actually. So empty text is null or empty. Yes, this is definitely going to be true, I would say. And if I run it, yes, it's true. But then what I would expect is something like this. If I say empty text is not null or empty, I would expect false, but it's true again. What's going on here? Like it's still readable, very nice and readable, but it's telling me something different. How should I understand this? I mean, it's not null or empty. That's usually what we had in the method. Okay, and you really have to understand how this works. So or is actually applied to this. So empty text is then the first part, not null, or empty text is empty string. And of course, empty text is empty string, so this is going to be true. So what I actually wanted to say was n is not null or empty. What I'm just trying to say is we really have to be careful and understand how the things are structured. So for example, also and what can be done with it. Let me take a look on, I will just say, let's say I want to say that number is int and let's say, I'm sorry, n greater than 5, which is false, of course. But these kind of things, when you understand how it works, many of these things you don't have to write. You can simply write number is greater than 5. Okay, so how it works it is equivalent to this above. So there are really some very nice expressions which you can write with this pattern matching. It's mighty and it's beautiful, but be cautious, or be aware that these kind of mistakes can happen if you are not aware of how it functions in the background. Of course, you don't have to write this if you know that number is integer. In this case, number is object for us, so we are really testing it like this. Or for example, what we can say here, number is 5, or I can say empty string. Looks strange, but if you think of what I explained before, these are actually two things. Number is 5, or number is empty string. Yeah. So we have pattern matching on two types and so on. I will not go into more detail, but everything we had in pattern matching before in C#7 means extractions, and all these things are still there. But with this conditional operators and not, we gain much more expression power. Yeah. Good. Sorry for jumping in. I just wanted to.
Yeah. Just a quick observation. It seems to me that people who have a background in F# are much more keen to start using these patterns in C#.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. The first time I was giving a talk about pattern matching was when it was first introduced in C#7, and it was actually hilarious how less it could, because I did some F# programming and was very aware of pattern matching and how mighty it is in F#, like all the features you were showing, like completeness checks and so on. And in C#7, it was a very rudimental. And with these features which are introduced now in C#9, it's getting comparable. And once when you get used to it, for example, for the new switch expression, as you demonstrated, it becomes very close to F#, definitely. Yeah. Maybe if you allow me just one more example.
Yeah, sure.
This I wrote. So here is let's say something we were not able to write before. This nice is greater than 1 and less than 10. Yeah. This is something you can now actually do. So that character is greater than A and less than Z and so on. These kind of things were like simply not possible before in C#. So there are certain expressions which will definitely become much nicer and more readable with this new pattern matching.
Yeah.
Please move on.
Okay. So what do you say we continue? I'll just quickly show one little thing. I have a local function here. What's new in C#9 is possibility to place attribute above a local function. I'll just quickly say we can place here any attribute with any values and declare our own attributes. Okay, small little feature, but there's something that I would like to show, and that's here. We have two classes for calculating statistics. One for all the employees, number of employees, average vacation days, and so on, and another one that actually calculates statistics for all the company, for the complete company. It does all the statistics for employees and adds a few more statistics. Now, these two classes, if I show them one by another, we can see that class for employees is base class for company is derived class, and it inherits actually the class for employees. They both have one single method, calculate statistics. The reason why this class is called calculate statistics company and not only calculate statistics Why I had to add this line here, this part here, is because these two methods are returning the different objects. One is returning stats employees, and the other is returning stats company. But with C#9, I can use covariant return types, and I can remove calculate stats. I can remove company from calculate stats and leave only this part. Now I can override it. I have derived class that is overriding a method from the base class, but the return type is different in derived class and in the base class. This could help us in some cases to make code more readable.
Here, if I may add, it helps us to make code more natural. This is one of the features I was like voting for a long time. Was missing it in general. So we are talking about the covariant return types here. This is one of the examples. The other examples are like the implementation of interfaces and so on. It is a situation which comes not that, I mean, at least in my head, I remember how much I wanted to have this feature. It definitely makes the code more natural, and that's actually the thing we want to express. So you're asking for the statistics, and I'm giving back the specialized type of statistics. Why not? So personally, I definitely love this feature, and I see I'm gonna use it a lot, especially on this project. I'm working on these kind of situations. I'm talking about the sharp, and I show it shortly. These kind of situations actually come every once in a while, definitely.
Yeah, I would just like to show this part. This is the part where I'm using the stats method. I have calls to one class, derived class, base class. Everything is much more clearer if I remove this part. Now I see that I can call the overridden method in base class and in derived class, and it looks the same.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, if I started, this will continue to work. Okay, we can see the company statistics, check is everything still working. Okay, everything is working. We have the statistics here. Okay. Actually, that's all from my side, Igor. I would stop here with this people
So
sharp.
we're actually like more than an hour, definitely. I would say there are some similar features to this one which I like, but I would skip them now and just pay some attention to one of the major features which you will be affected with, and maybe some of you will use it. That feature would definitely require a talk on its own, but I just want to show you now what is it about, so that you are aware of it. So I'm gonna share my screen. So the feature is called code generators, or C# code generators. And what is it about, and what was the motivation for it? In a simple way, it's about the following. So during the compilation process, you will be able to write something called source generators. So this is your own code which generates code. Compiler will recognize that you are referencing some code generators, and it will run them. You will analyze the original source code and generate additional one. So what the feature is doing, literally, it scans the code which is a part of the compilation, and it can produce additional code and add it to compilation, and compiler will take both of them and continue with the compilation and provide the output. Okay, why is the feature here, or how it can help us? We have to understand the motivation for it. It was mainly driven by the trimming functionality of the new .NET 5. So what is it about? If you're producing standalone applications, the linker can trim them, meaning putting inside only the parts of the framework which are literally needed by the application. And in order for that to work really well, the trimming percentages as high as possible, compiler, the linker, actually, the trimmer, has to know which types are used. And so if you're using reflection, for example, or code generated at runtime, the trimming will definitely be lower. And if you think about some frameworks which you use on a regular basis, I believe, they actually do that. They generate code at runtime. A typical example is Automapper. Let's say it will analyze your code structures and so on, and it will generate the mapping at runtime. And thus, it definitely requires the API, which hinders the linter in producing even smaller assemblies. With the source generation, we can imagine auto-generator, which actually analyzes your code at compile time, generates the mappers at compile time, and they're compiled together with your code, so there is no reflection at runtime. You can read more about the feature, and what I want to show you now, just one example, what can it be done with it, that you get a feeling. I cover it on the awesome Roslyn page, so there are resources about the C# source generators, where you can really see some good examples and so on. And there is a whole chapter on source generators, where you can see what kind of things people do with source generators. It's really like these things are interesting, specialized serializers and so on. The example I want to show you now, because I think it's simple to grasp, is this generator. So it's called data builder generator. Let me zoom in a bit. You know what the data builder pattern is. So you have some object and you have a builder for that object, and then you build it in a fluent manner with some additional features and so on. And let's say it's used in tests. And what the generator is doing is the following: if you, in your code, if you have a class with the attribute generate data builder, what is going to happen during the compilation process? The source generation step will start. The compiler will recognize that you have this data builder generator. Data builder will analyze your source code. That means it will literally analyze the source code. It will find this attribute, then it will analyze this class, and it will produce a new class called person builder, okay, with all these methods and features and so on, without middle name, with last name, and so on. And this person builder will be added to the compilation process. So for the compiler, for the C# compiler, both classes exist. The class person exists, and the person builder exists. This is the essence of the feature. I will definitely prepare a special talk on it, because I see it also useful in two ways. So first of all, you will benefit from the libraries which will start supporting code generators. That means instead of doing runtime generation or reflection and analysis, they will use compile time code generation. That's one thing, indirectly. And also, if you have any kind of a boilerplate code which you write in your projects and so on, for which maybe you already did have some generations, like with T4 templates, you will also be able to utilize code generators. To use the features on your own, to write your own code generators, you have to understand how Roslyn works, which is a bit adventurous. But definitely, if you want to remove boilerplate from your own code, this is definitely a way to go. If you can think of this example, I really like it, because it's simple and demonstrates the feature. If you want to have like these mighty builders, and if you want to bring if you want to write them manually on your own, it's a tedious work, boilerplate definitely. So the author of this generator already had a tooling for generating them before, and now he switched to the source generators because this is what they are actually meant for. Good. So I just wanted to show this shortly, and I think we are a bit off. It's almost 7:30. I would say let's see if there are some comments and some questions.
Okay.
I will see if you have any questions or comments. Please ask us. So we are here. Let me take a look. Hi Tony. So he's saying hi. So hi Tony. Here is an interesting comment, which maybe makes sense
Hi, Tony, from my side also.
To maybe just shortly discuss it. VAR is comfortable but decreases readability. Let me just quickly switch to this example which I was showing. Yeah, it's this one. So maybe short story. I remember when VAR was introduced, I was playing. That was a C# 3.0. I was playing with the pre-releases at the time and so on, and I was aware of the feature and I was like welcoming the feature definitely. Then I went on a vacation. It was a month vacation. I came back. Meanwhile, the colleague switched to C# 3.0 and consistently removed like all the types from this kind of local variable declarations, and it was VAR everywhere. I couldn't read the code anymore. It definitely decreased. I would not say the readability or understandability of the code, because the types are important. While I was working on this tool Sharpen for analyzing the solutions for 3.0, like for implicitly typed local variables, I was really thinking about best practices for using VAR. It's not always the best one. In this particular case, if I have object creation, like direct object creation, like in this example, I definitely see VAR as improving readability. But if I have VAR something equal, some strange method and so on, then not. So I pick up a few of the rules which I out of the practice see as meaningful, and I build them into the tool. But now I really have to rethink it with this, let's say, conflicting area where VAR and target type expressions overlap. There are not that many of them. Yeah. Good. Oh, maybe speaking of Sharpen, so it helps you model a tool that helps you model and C# and learn it a bit and so on. Still doesn't support C# 9.0. I expect by the end of the year to have the first version which supports it. Good. Thanks, Richard. Any other question? So if you still have any, please just type them in the comments. Not
question or comment or opinion about some of the new C# 9 features.
If not, then we will close slowly. Okay.
Yeah.
So thanks. What to say? This was the demo. In case you have some wish really for a good team trainings, at GUID New we have this GUID-X branch, X stands for experience and expertise, and for the fields where we have experience and expertise, we offer trainings and consultancy. And in this particular case, like for software modernization, we definitely have experience and expertise. It's not only about the changing frameworks or language versions and so on. Modernization, software modernization on all levels in .NET, and also we offer trainings for modern C#, refactoring to modern C#. Good. You can find the source code at Marko's GitHub. So Marko Lohert. So the people is there, and of course, feel free to contact us if you have any additional questions. So these are our contact data. I'm personally Rončević almost everywhere, and Marko is also consistently Marko Lohert almost everywhere. That's it then. If there are no any questions, I would just say thank you definitely for your time, attentions, patience, and so on. And looking forward to seeing you in February. So in January we will have a break, and we will continue with the sessions in February. And that's it then for today.
Okay. Thank you for my side also.
Yeah. Thank you.